Number 10. Roman eunuch. In an absolutely bizarre discovery out of North Yorkshire in the United Kingdom, archaeologists dug up the ancient remains of a eunuch who had once been part of the Roman population. The eunuch was discovered bedazzled with jewelry buried in what experts believe is women's clothing, and completely castrated, probably by himself during an excruciating religious ceremony. The dig came about because of a bypass that was being constructed to serve as a link between London and Hadrian's Wall. Archaeologists found elaborate paintings, an ancient Roman motel, and of course the strange eunuch priest. He was buried with 2 pebbles stuffed in his mouth, something done by members of the cult of Cybele. The stones were symbolic, a hope that in death he would have the manhood that he robbed from himself given back. But here's what's so crazy about the discovery. His body proved that there were many mystical religions from the Far East active in Roman Britain during the 4th century. This is solidified by other bizarre finds, such as a castration clamp that was recently pulled out of the Thames River. To date, the eunuch priest is the only man who's ever been found wearing such an array of jewelry in Britain. And why he decided to snip himself for his cult is because the devotees to Cybele wanted to model themselves after the lover of their goddess, Attis, who himself became a eunuch as a self-punishment for having an affair. Number 9. Creepy bug fossil. The creepiest fossil in the world was just found in Scotland. The fossil is that of a millipede, which, according to the study done by members of the University of Texas, may be the oldest bug in the entire world. The millipede dates back 425 million years and is older than any other fossil discovered of any other insect, creepy crawly, or arachnid. It's about 75 million years younger than any other millipede found. And while researchers admit there could be older fossils of bugs out there, they have not found them yet. Thanks to this fossil, scientists have concluded that bugs likely evolved much more quickly than previously thought. They now believe that insects went from hanging around lakes and shorelines to occupying forests and creating complex ecosystems of their own in only 40 million years. Researchers say that there was a rapid evolution that began at the water's edge, spread to nearby areas, and soon went worldwide. And it may have started with this tiny, seemingly insignificant, and undoubtedly creepy millipede. The thing is that scientists have found other bug deposits dating just 20 million years after the millipede. But add another 20 million years onto that, and scientists have found evidence of forests ripe with a multitude of bizarre insects and spiders. But what happened between the emergence of the millipede and the establishment of forest ecosystems is still an utter mystery. Number 8. Ancient Chinese tombs. Tombs have been uncovered in ancient China that are beyond creepy. About 500 artifacts have been saved from the ancient tombs, all of which date back about 2,700 years before today. The tombs were found in the Shanxi province, containing many amazing cultural relics built from a variety of materials, such as jade, copper, gold, and bamboo. There were 9 tombs discovered, all of which were about medium-sized. Many of the bronze wares that were found, things like pots and bowls, still had legible inscriptions on them in ancient Chinese characters. One of the oddest discoveries came in the form of cat paws. The archaeologists apparently found strange golden ornaments shaped like cat paws, and nobody really knows what they were used for. But who did these creepy tombs belong to? They were created to be the eternal resting place of nobles who lived during what is now known as the Spring and Autumn period of China, between 770 and 476 BCE. However, archaeologists did not divulge whether they had actually discovered any bodies. Right now, it's believed that the tombs were already pillaged by grave robbers by the time archaeologists got there, meaning no bones and no bodies. Number 7. Chan Chan statues. The Chan Chan statues are some of the strangest things ever excavated in Peru. They were found at the largest pre-Columbian site anywhere in the Americas, the Chan Chan Archaeological Site. This place was once the capital of the legendary Chamu Kingdom, which actually came before the powerful Inca Empire. The ancient city, known as Trujillo, thrived as a budding metropolis between the years 900 and 1450, far from the altitude of the Andes Mountains, near the northernmost coast of Peru. But what about these statues? About 20 of them were found by Patricia Balbuena and her team of archaeologists. They were found literally buried in soil at the entrance of one of the largest temple complexes in the ancient city. They were once part of a corridor leading to a ceremonial courtyard. The statues were probably used to mark the tombs of very important people. When someone would walk through the corridor, all these creepy little statues would stare back at them. There were likely many more statues when the city was prosperous over 1,000 years ago, but now there are only about 20 left. At its height, the Chan Chan archaeological site probably boasted at least 30,000 inhabitants. The city center is about 2.3 square miles. The suburbs are significantly larger. The first foreign eyes to see the city were back in 1532. Most of the city was eventually looted. An archaeological dig in the 16th century even found a doorway made of solid silver that would have been worth about $2 million today. Number 6. Shipwreck artifacts. Shipwrecks are mysterious enough without being full of creepy artifacts. But a vessel was recently discovered off the coast of England, and scientists can't quite wrap their heads around a collection of mysterious artifacts. Now, Historic England is using high-resolution X-ray scanners to properly analyze the artifacts and see just what these weird things are. Let's back it up to the actual shipwreck. The vessel is known as the Rus Wujik, and it sank off the coast of Kent way back in 1740. At the time, it was filled with trading goods, such as silver coins and metallic thimbles. But underwater archaeologists also discovered that there may have been some smuggling going on. They found coins that had actually been sewn into people's clothing. The best guess is that some ordinary people working on the ship got a little too handsy with the treasure and stitched the coins into their apparel to keep them hidden. But even though archaeologists have identified coins and other artifacts from the wreckage, there are still some objects that they can't identify without using the most advanced X-ray scanners because the objects have become covered in concretions. Or in other words, they've become covered in hard mineral deposits. So we will still have to wait a while before some of the more obscure treasure is identified. Number 5. Colonial Tavern. In North Carolina, archaeologists were examining a colonial tavern from the 18th century. They were shocked to discover that the building had burned down in the 1760s, causing the walls of the structure to collapse. Because of the walls collapsing, the basement of the tavern was sealed like a time capsule. Nobody had entered the space until Dr. Charles Ewan and his team of researchers from East Carolina University stumbled upon it. Beneath the foundations of the Colonial Tavern, the students found evidence that the building had once been used as a brothel. They found smoking pipes, brass taps from wine barrels, and a whole lot of artifacts that had probably belonged to ladies of the evening, such as clothing fasteners and straight pins. They even found an Irish halfpenny dated back to 1766. The consensus had been that the tavern doubled as a brothel, which may have been operating out of the basement. This would explain all the suspicious paraphernalia. If you're wondering how such a discovery can go unmade in the United States until just now, it's because the tavern was only discovered recently thanks to ground-penetrating radar. After the accidental fire burned the tavern/brothel to the ground, it literally got covered up. The scientists had to dig the remains of the building out of the ground, uncovering like some kind of ancient Egyptian tomb. Number 4. Neanderthal bodies. Archaeologists recently discovered the very creepy ancient remains of 9 Neanderthals near Rome, according to Italy's Culture Ministry. The oldest of the bodies dates back to between 90,000 and 100,000 years old. The bodies were uncovered inside a prehistoric cave. However, you can hardly call them bodies. They were more like fossilized bones. Scientists found fragments of skull and shattered jawbones, and they say the remains belong to 7 men, 1 woman, and 1 child. But here's the creepy part of the discovery. According to Mario Rolfo, a professor of archaeology working closely with the excavations, the Neanderthals had probably not been living in the cave. On the contrary, they had probably been killed by wild hyenas and then dragged back to the cave, which the hyenas actually lived in, before being eaten as dog food. Back when Neanderthals were still pitiful cave people, they had a bit of a harder time defending themselves against prowling animals, and hyenas were especially keen on hunting down ancient humans and eating them. Specifically, they would hunt infants and elderly people, or even those who were sick. Number 3. Spiderweb masks. The traditional masks made from the indigenous people of Malekula are strange, creepy, and very cool. Malekula is the second largest island of Vanuatu, which itself is an island nation deep in the South Pacific Ocean. The island was left pretty much alone for most of the colonial expansion that took place before the 20th century. This allowed the indigenous people here to preserve a lot of their traditions. One of their traditions was making cloth out of spider webs, specifically cloth from the golden silk orb weaver. The tribespeople would go to the forest and collect raw webs until they had enough that they could mold them into bizarre masks. These masks would often have scary, almost demonic faces painted on them. They would sometimes be equipped with boar tusks, and sometimes clay was added to make the faces even more frightening. There are not many of these masks left today. Some have been retrieved from the island and brought to various museums around the world. But what's really shocking is that scientists can't quite figure out what the masks were used for. Some experts have called them suffocating hoods. Early visitors to the South Pacific Islands believed that the masks were used to kill widows at the funerals of their husbands. They would put the mask on, which, because of the way it was made, would suffocate them. This was probably not the case, though, because the Malekulan society is still so isolated, it's not like anybody can just go ask. Scientists believe the masks do serve a ceremonial function, they just don't know what it is. Number 2. Mass moat grave. In the Netherlands, researchers have unearthed a mass grave of what they believe to be medieval skeletons. It all happened when city workers began to excavate a moat. They found the bodies of men between the ages of 15 and 30, all of whom lived near the end of the Middle Ages. Additionally, rusty nails were collected from around the skeletons, suggesting they had been buried inside of boxes. Unfortunately, scientists don't quite understand what this means. The moat being excavated surrounds the famous Botstein Castle. Nobody had thought it would be riddled with corpses. They first found 9 skeletons, but within another few hours had bumped up the total to 20. Archaeologists are now saying there could be even more skeletons all throughout the ancient moat. But here's what makes it a bit creepy. Normally, when there are buried bodies, there are grave goods. But in this case, archaeologists haven't found anything of worth. This has pointed to a mass murder. It's quite likely that a large group of people had been killed, stuffed into boxes, and then tossed into the moat to rot. Nobody knows why this happened or who was killed. It's a miracle they even found the bones in the first place. Number 1. Anti-witchcraft potion. Angeline Tubbs is also known as the Witch of Saratoga. She was born in the year 1761 inside of a small pub called the Star and Garter Inn, located in Northamptonshire. She left England at the age of 15, moved to America, and began to tell fortunes. Legends say she was followed around by cats and was in fact a very real witch. She also apparently lived to be 104 years old. Now, in the house that Angeline Tubbs was born in, the current owner recently discovered a bottle from the 1800s used as an anti-witchcraft potion. The bottle was found while the owner of the building was doing roof repairs. But what's really strange is that the bottle was probably made sometime in the 1830s, long after the alleged witch had already fled to America. What this suggests is that the people living in Angeline's birthplace were still so scared of witches that they created an anti-witchcraft potion to ward off the evil stain of Angeline's birth. The bottle then sat in the chimney for nearly 200 years, providing supposed protection against evil spells. But what was inside the bottle, you ask? It contained fish hooks, glass, human teeth, and a disgusting, unidentified liquid. Which of these creepy discoveries freaked you out the most? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more from the channel.